Right, bring it on in week 6 already. I feel like that has to be a typo. That can't be right. Week 6 of the college football season is already here. But Joe, we are back. Beef Up Front podcast, weekly college football picks and preview show. Coming off a pretty awesome week of college football last week. It was a very highly anticipated week. We got two great games on Friday night, or three great games even, if you want to put the Houston Oregon State game in there. But TCU Arizona State was an awesome one. Virginia, your dog of the day, goes to or beats Florida State at home as a 7-point underdog. Saturday, you start off with USC Illinois was a pretty great game. 3:30, you have Ole Miss taking down LSU, and then the night game, you got both road teams in Oregon and Alabama going to Penn State and going to Georgia and winning those football games outright. A pretty awesome week of college football last week, Joe. I think it lived up to the hype.
Yeah, for sure, Coyle. And I mean, I was talking about that a little bit at the start of the podcast last week when I was just talking about the weekend. Like the one thing college football does on a consistent basis is their big games deliver. And don't get me wrong, every once in a while you'll still get the, oh, it's 42-0 in the third quarter of this primetime game. You know what I mean? And there'll be your blowouts here and there. But college football more often than not delivers on a more consistent basis than, we see from the NFL. Like, perfect example, last night, two terrible Monday Night Football games. I apologize to America for having to watch the Jets at all. I hope we just get flexed out of the league at this point. I would love to just see Army take our spot in the NFL. I think that would be more entertaining at this point. But great weekend of college football last weekend. Rotting on the couch all day was great. It was awesome. I watched so much college football. It felt good. We hadn't had a big weekend like that. I know, since last year, this is the first real big weekend of the year. I know Labor Day weekend, but it's still a little different. Still, you might be doing stuff with family on Labor Day weekend and you're watching the games, but you're not able to kind of 100% lock in. It was really fun yesterday to just sit there I got to my my soon-to-be brother-in-law's house at 1 in the afternoon, and I sat on his couch and watched until literally the end of the whiteout game at like midnight or close to it. So it was just a great day of college football, awesome weekend, and I think we got a couple of sneaky good games this weekend as well. Not as much as last week, so people will think this is the down week and like the apple picking week, the pumpkin patch week to go with your significant others. But I still think this is a big weekend in college football coming up.
Yeah, like you said, not the amount of headliner games, but there's still a handful of good ones and a handful of games that kind of have me intrigued. Like we're going to touch on number 24 Virginia at Louisville, two teams that, as of right now, sitting here have a chance to make a run at the ACC. Like the ACC, Clemson not living up to the hype. Obviously, that league looks wide open, especially now with Florida State already dropping to 0-1. They go to Miami. We'll talk about that game. Very interested in this Iowa State-Cincinnati game that we're going to touch on. Iowa State only a 1.5-point favorite here. They've looked like maybe the best team in the Big 12. Then we have another team, really good team in the Big 12 so far, Texas Tech. They go to an undefeated Houston team. So a lot of big things to talk about this week. Excited to get into it, but we'll start on Saturday. Number 14 Iowa State at 5-0. Big 12 matchup. They travel to Cincy to play the 3-1 Bearcats. 12 o'clock kick on ESPN2. Iowa State's a 1.5-point favorite here, over under 52.5, Joe. In Cincinnati last week, a big win on the road outright over Kansas. Ruins your perfect lock of the week stretch to start the year, but putting that aside, that's an impressive win to go on the road in the Big 12 and get that done. Do you think they can get this one done at home?
Yeah, I was really impressed with Cincinnati there. I thought that was a game they definitely lost. Even if they, Kansas weren't going to cover that spread, I was still surprised that they lost outright. Now you get to come home, you get a big game against Iowa State. But I'm going to go with the Cyclones here, winning this game 28-20. I think this is just the quietest 5-0 team in the country. They're sitting there at 14th. They've gone and, I can argue about rankings all day. And if you think Texas and Penn State are better teams than Iowa State, that's fine. But neither one of those teams so far have beaten Power 5 opponents. Say what you want, but they've beaten Kansas State. They won against Iowa in a rivalry game. They won against Arizona. Like, those are 3 power conference games. They won a weird group of 5. They went to Arkansas State. That's a game they should win, but that's still like a weird spot for them to be in. I'm really impressed with Iowa State so far. This is going to be a tough test. especially with their next, couple of games coming up. They have this game against Cincinnati. They go to Boulder, and even though Colorado isn't as good as they were last year, that's still not going to be an easy spot. That's still going to be a nationally broadcasted game, hyped up game. Then you get back to back games against ranked opponents with BYU and Arizona State coming to town. But I think Iowa State gets this game done. I'm a big believer in Rocco Becht. I think it's going to be definitely leaning towards the under. I think 52.5 is a little bit too many points. So I'm going to go with 28-20 Iowa State over Cincinnati.
Yeah, Iowa State, a team that has just been kind of disrespected. I think at least over these past 2 weeks by Vegas. Last week they were only like a 4.5 point favorite. I think they closed out against Arizona, and that game was never in doubt. That was one of the more handily beat down games of the week last week from the major conferences. And for Iowa State to be in this situation again, it's a head scratcher. It makes you think, like, are they really not that good? And they're just kind of getting by the skin of their teeth thus far. And is Vegas kind of noticing that and not really buying into the hype on this team? Maybe they're due for loss, but I'm not really that in on this Cincinnati team. Sure, going on the road is never easy, but Cincinnati Bearcats isn't exactly the most, daunting environment in all of college football. So I'm with you. I think this one is more of a defensive battle. When you're Iowa State, you've been able to, at least when they're good, they're able to kind of control the tempo and make these lower scoring games. They like to play that keep away style, don't hurt yourselves, and they found a way to do that. Rocco Becht has played really well to start the season, leading them to 5-0. It's just sickening to me to see that after this game that they'll be finished their sixth game, halfway done their season. It's pretty insane there. But I definitely like Iowa State here. Could be a rat line. I could be falling for the cheese in this spot. But I'm going to take them to get the win. I just think they're flat out the better team and only a 1.5 point favorite. I'll ride with that every day of the week. So give me Iowa State 24-20, Iowa State -1.5 and under 52.5 there. All right, the college game day game of the week. Number 16 Vanderbilt at 5-0 at number 10 Alabama 3-1. I think I saw this is the first time in 89 matchups between the two schools that they've actually both been ranked at the same exact time. It's pretty wild there. 3:30 kick on ABC. Bama 9.5 point favorite here at home, over under 56.5. Bama coming off that big win at Georgia. Had this game circled on the calendar for sure after tripping up to Vandy last year. I think Diego Pavia has that magic up his sleeve again, Joe, and can pull off a crazy upset.
I will say, before I get into this game, I saw this tweet that was like, if you told me that game day was going to be going to Bama for the Vanderbilt game, I would have told you that you were on crack. Like if you told me this 5 years ago or whatever. But I think Bama's going to end up winning this game, but I think Vandy covers. I got Bama 35, Vandy 28. I might even sprinkle the Vandy halftime money line, like first half money line. I think Diego Pavia and the Commodores are going to come out firing. Like I said, this is a really tough spot in the schedule. You don't really have an opportunity to have a letdown game. Like I want to say this is going to be your typical letdown game. You have the nationally broadcast primetime game at Georgia. But Vandy smoked you, or not smoked, smoked you last year. I don't care that it was like a touchdown or whatever. Vanderbilt beating you at all, you got smoked last year. Now you come home, you get Vanderbilt again. But then, next week, if they beat Vanderbilt, you're going to see me talking about this on Beef Up Front next week. Hey, Mizzou, this is looking like a letdown spot for Bama, just because at some point it's tough. Kind of like I was saying with USF, I know totally different levels of talent. I shouldn't have even tried to compare Bama to USF, but you're playing all these high level games back to back to back. You're bound for a letdown spot. That's why I don't think Bama's going to roll Vandy. I also have a lot of respect for Vandy. I think they're a very good football team. I think Diego Pavia is a very good quarterback. But I will say this, if you think Vanderbilt is going to pull off this upset, sprinkle Pavia to win the Heisman. Because if he gets Vandy into the playoff, I don't really care what his stats are. He's got to win something. You have to give him some type of award. But that being said, I think Bama's going to win, but I do think it's going to be – I don't think they're going to blow him out. I think Vandy's going to cover. Ty Simpson, he led them to a game. I've been very impressed with him this year. The progression that he's had so far from the FSU game through last on Saturday night is very impressive. But I think that they're going to not be able to blow Vandy out. I think they'll keep it close, even if it's like a late touchdown and make it within a score, something like that. But I think Vandy keeps it within the number.
Yeah, Vandy, I mean, obviously playing the SEC, really tough schedule the rest of the way, including this week at Bama. And they host LSU. Don't think it's crazy to say that they could potentially be favored in that matchup. Versus Missouri at home, you're probably favored in that one. At Texas, you'll be a dog. And they host Auburn and Kentucky. I would think, as of right now, all things considered, they're probably favorites in that one. And then at Tennessee, like you might only be underdogs in 2 games the rest of the way. Maybe the LSU game. We'll see how this game goes, but there's a legit chance this Vandy team goes like 9-3 this year, I think, and that's the story in college football. I don't care, bar none. That's the story, and Diego Pavia becomes instantly a college football legend. So, would be a pretty cool story to finish out the year. But when you're looking at this matchup this week between Alabama and Vanderbilt, I think Alabama has had this one circled, highlighted, Sharpie, whatever you want to call it, major this entire offseason. All eyes have been kind of on this game, and credit to Vandy, hat off to Vandy for getting that attention, getting that notoriety from Alabama. But for what they did to them last year, that's just a thing that could never happen under Nick Saban. So I think when Bama, especially coming off last week's big win, I feel like the momentum is starting kind of to pick back up, especially after that deflating early regular season loss. They're kind of starting to feel like that Alabama again, where maybe that was a loss that they needed to kind of wake up this program for good under DeBoer. I got to think Alabama rolls in this one and does it pretty convincingly. I'm going to go 34-20. So Bama minus 9.5, under 56.5. Not going to be shocked at all. Vanderbilt wins this game, and Diego Pavia finds a way to keep it close. But I just think there's so much revenge on this Alabama team's mind in this spot, in this matchup, that they got to get this one done. Not just for the guys who were, there last year and that experienced it, but just for program-wise. I don't care how good Vandy's been this year. Alabama can never be doing that. So give me Alabama to win that one and to cover. All right, we go to the ACC now for 3:30 kick on ESPN2. Number 24, Virginia, 4-1. Maybe the best game I watched all of last week. I watched that one pretty much from start to finish. An awesome thriller in that upset over Florida State. Shout out to you, Joe, on your dog of the day last week. Cash in Virginia, they're outright. They're going to Louisville, who's 4-0. Louisville, a really good comeback in their own right. Louisville's a 6.5-point favorite here, over under 62.5. And if you're Virginia, is this a complete fall flat spot after maybe the biggest win in the program within the past 10 to 15 years?
I think this is the fall flat spot. I'm going with Louisville here because Louisville's also a good football team. Let's not, Louisville isn't some scrub team walking out here. You're not going to play Stanford. No offense to Stanford, but you're going to play Louisville, which is a team that a lot of people are talking about as a dark horse ACC candidate to begin with. A team that you look at their schedule, for both of these teams, this is a sliding doors moment for their season. Because with Florida State taking that loss to Virginia, especially if Florida State were to lose to Miami, they're out of the race with 2 losses, most likely. You never know what could happen, but most likely. Virginia, going forward after this Louisville game, they have no ranked teams on their schedules. The remainder of their schedule after this are home against Washington State, at UNC, at Cal, home Wake Forest, at Duke, home Virginia Tech. You can argue their toughest game left on the schedule is at Duke late in the year. Virginia can absolutely, if they get through this game, use this momentum and go on a legit run to potentially the college football playoff, which is crazy if you told me that at the beginning of the season, because don't forget that loss to NC State is a non-conference game. That's a non-conference game. I think it's the dumbest thing in the world.
Why is that one in the conference? I remember why that Arizona Kansas State one was.
That is another non-conference game because
that was booked before they merged into the same conference. But why the hell was NC State Virginia?
Because I think they were having trouble getting games with. I think they're at 9 games now for the conference, and with the 18 games, it was tough to schedule teams, so they scheduled each other, which makes that should be illegal. Play a Division III school at that point. I don't care. I think it's the dumbest thing in the world. Because now imagine you're NC State, you have 1 loss, you don't get to go to the conference title because it was a non-conference game. Like, that's stupid. But that being said, I'm going with Miller Moss and the Louisville Cardinals. I think they're going to have a big game at home. I think they're going to use this momentum because I'm not going to sit here and go through their schedule either, but they have a relatively manageable schedule besides a road game at Miami. So this is a big game for both of these teams. A lot bigger now after that Virginia win. I hate saying that because I love all college football, but this game has definitely gotten a lot more important. But I'm going with Louisville here, 42-24. I'm going to take Louisville minus 6.5. I'm going to take the over as well.
Yeah, that Virginia team, man, that win really stuck out to me last week. Like, and I don't think that was a fluky win. Like, I think guy for guy that they played right there. And sure, the crowd was juiced up. The home field advantage looked great for Virginia. But Chandler Morris, Joe, you touched on it last week. How you love him. That guy's a dog at the quarterback spot. He's a player that's been around the block a time or two during his college football carousel. I think this is his fourth program. But he's a dude at the quarterback spot, man. And that was a team that had a lot of guts. They impressed me last week. I didn't really think that was a fluke win. Looking at their schedule, as you touched on, I really think they could win 8 to 9 games, and that would be a pretty awesome season for Virginia football, who's been pretty mediocre to below mediocre for a while. So huge week this week to see if they can bounce back. But I think it's just a spot that's such a high that they're coming off of. And this is a damn good Louisville team. I think you can make an argument right now that Louisville, Miami, Georgia Tech, those are probably your 3 top dogs in this conference. The three teams that I say as of right now have the best chance to win that conference title. Miami looking by far the best, but Louisville, Miller Moss, and this offense, I think when they're cooking, they're really good. And Georgia Tech, we saw them struggle last week with Wake Forest, but that's a really tough team in their own right. I think the ACC low-key is going to be a super entertaining race down the line. Like I think the Big Ten, we're probably looking at a Oregon, Ohio State collision course, SEC wide open, but the ACC wide open, and even the Big 12 wide open. And I think that's the awesome part about this season so far. There hasn't been really one superior dominant team. Like Ohio State's looked really good, but have they looked unbeatable? Oregon's looked really good at spots. That was a really impressive win to go to Penn State last week, but are they unbeatable? Like they showed some flaws in the second half. They still have a young quarterback in Dante Moore. Like there's things to pick at there still with this team. So I think the races in college football are going to be really fun here down the stretch. But back to this game for purposes, I'm going to go with Louisville to win and to cover as well, 35-28. I came away really impressed with the Virginia offense, and Louisville's offense has been really impressive too. I like the over here at 62.5 in this matchup, and I will take Louisville to cover. I just think Virginia's coming off such a high. It was like their Super Bowl last week, as you touched on. To get back on the horse, go on the road on this one against a damn good Louisville squad, going to be tough to get back up for. So give me Louisville 35-28. But if Virginia's able to keep this one close, I think they're going to be a real player here. Maybe not to win the ACC, but certainly to play some spoiler and really put some teams on kind of upset alert down the stretch. All right, let's go to our G5 game of the week. Boise State at 3-1, basically playing for their season here. Losing that game at the beginning of this season to USF, almost, if not eliminated them from contention for that G5 playoff spot. But they have a chance to redeem themselves here, going to number 21 Notre Dame at 2-2. 3:30 kick on NBC. Notre Dame minus 18.5. Over under 64.5, Joe. And the defense showed up last week, but the offense, once again, under CJ Carr, has been looking awesome for Notre Dame. I've been really impressed with them. Thoughts on Notre Dame in this matchup, and can they cover this big number?
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame, I think, will cover, bless you. Notre Dame, I think, will cover this number here. Love CJ Carr. He's been improving every single week. I know in the past you've seen Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman struggle with the group of 5 teams. The outright loss to Marshall, Northern Illinois come to mind. Those were a lot earlier in the season. And I feel like since that Northern Illinois loss last year, Notre Dame as a program and Marcus Freeman as a coach have been totally different. I think that shot him out of a cannon. Obviously, they went all the way to the national title game last year, ended up losing to Ohio State. 2 tough losses to start the year at Miami, who is currently number 3 in the country, and then A&M, who's in the top 10 as well. So 2 very, I don't want to start talking about like good, like, you don't want to lose the games, but if you're going to have 2 losses, those aren't the 2 worst losses to have. We saw them blow out Arkansas. I think they're going to blow out Boise in this game, especially being at Notre Dame Stadium. I'm going to go with Notre Dame 45, Boise State 17. I really haven't been impressed with Boise. You really can see how much Genty meant to this football team. They went to Air Force a couple weeks ago, only won by 12. They smoked App State at home. I don't know. That's not really a loss that moves a needle for me. It wouldn't be shocked if they cover. I don't think they will, though. I think this is going to be one of those games, kind of like how we saw with Penn State last year, even with Genty, Notre Dame, I think, is going to be able to control the line of scrimmage. I think you're just going to see the athletic profile of Notre Dame compared to Boise State, and you're going to be like, oh, this makes sense. So I think Notre Dame is going to roll in this game.
Yeah, I think Boise State's playoff dreams die on Saturday out there in South Bend. 18 and a half is a big number. For a respectable program like Boise State, I'm having a little bit of trouble laying that. And like you said, in these spots, I'm not going to say that they're going to lose this game, but you look at a couple spots for Marcus Freeman at home, these afternoon slots. Like, I feel like his teams tend to actually perform better in the prime time and in the big moments. This is one of those kind of slip-up spots potentially coming off a beatdown of an SEC team. You beat them down so bad they had to fire their coach after the game. This could be a spot where you kind of take the foot off the gas a little bit, but that offense has been damn impressive. I do like the over in this one at 64.5. I'll go Notre Dame 41-24. So Boise State keeps it within the number. But betting wise, straight up play wise, this is kind of a stay away for me. I really don't think that there's much, to take in this one because Boise State kind of playing for their life in this game, and then Notre Dame as well. They've had some slip-ups, but, you look at these two teams on paper and the way that they've performed on the field thus far, I think Notre Dame is by far the better team. So don't really got a good read or good angle on this one, but I will take, for our pick's sake, Notre Dame to win, Boise to cover, and the over hitting it as well. All right, we go to the Big 12 now. Number 11, Texas Tech at 4-0, travels to Houston, who is a very surprising 4-0. I was high on this team to be like bowl eligible, maybe get the 7-5 at best, but it's a team starting out 4-0, kind of like Virginia. What's your ceiling from here? I know Virginia's 4-1, but two teams that wasn't much expected from, and they've performed well to start the year. So I always like those kind of stories as well. It's a 7:00 kick on ESPN. Texas Tech, 12.5-point favorite. They're living up to the hype so far. They've looked really good, including that beatdown of Utah. Over under in this one is 50.5, Joe.
Every time I see Houston now, I just get a jump scare of Connor Wegman, and I forget that he's still in college football. Still only a junior.
Yeah.
Like as a junior in college football. We could see this is his fourth year. We are getting at least one more because I don't think he'll be declaring for the NFL anytime soon. But it is funny how you're seeing these old A&M quarterbacks still thriving or just still being in college football at all. Calzada up at Kentucky, obviously. Haynes King over at Georgia Tech has been incredible. They're undefeated still. I'm never going to knock starting 4-0 for Houston, but I have no idea what to think about this Houston team. Cole, you were kind of alluding to it a little bit. It's like, what's your ceiling here? Their 4 wins, they just survived an Oregon State team that looked like one of the worst teams in the country. Last Friday night, Luke thought that Houston was going to win by $1 billion. Obviously, he bet on them, so they almost lost. Colorado, who the heck knows? Stephen F. Austin's an FCS school. You only beat 27-0, and then at Rice 35-9. Like, I'm going with Texas Tech to win the game. This is a game I'll probably stay away from gambling wise. I'll take the Cougs to cover plus 12.5 just because I think, a primetime spot, the crowd's going to be jumping. You have a chance to knock off what's currently, the Big 12 favorites. But I'm going to go with the over as well. I have no read on this game. I've been looking at this game. There's nothing I like. So I'll go with Texas Tech to win. I'll play it safe with Houston to cover. And I'll go the over as well because one thing Texas Tech has been doing for the most part this season. I know, against Utah on the road, they, didn't score as much as they have in the past, but I think Texas Tech can still score at will. So I'm going to go with the over in this game.
Yeah, Texas Tech has been super impressive. Even when we go to Utah and you're able to put the beat down on them like that and put up points on them, that offense is legit. That offense is going to stick. I think by far Texas Tech has been the most impressive team in the Big 12 thus far. And we talked about it going into that Utah game where neither Texas Tech or Utah really played anyone yet. But for Texas Tech to go out there on their field and dominate Utah the way they did, that win's still sticking in the back of my mind. I know Arizona State's looked really good in stretches. TCU's looked really good. That was an awesome game last week. But Texas Tech's got to be that top dog in the Big 12 for everyone right now, and probably your favorite, obviously, to go to the college football playoff out of this conference. They're living up to the hype. The quarterback with his experience, Morton, even if it was Hammond who came in for Morton when he got hurt, the defense is flying around. That's a really damn good Texas Tech team, and pretty cool to kind of see their growth under Joey McGuire, and obviously the infusion of NIL money has helped as well. But with all that being said, I like them to win this game 31-17. I'm going to go Texas Tech minus 12.5 in the under of 50.5. I do think Houston has been, the product of a pretty weak schedule thus far and needed some pretty crazy heroics to come back and win that game last week. So I'm going to take Texas Tech to win that one and to cover 12.5, and we'll go under 50.5 as well. All right, final game of the week. Number 3, Miami, 4-0. Lost a little bit of luster when Florida State, number 18, fell to 3-1 after that loss to Virginia. This probably would have been the game day game, I think, a good chance. Maybe Vandy, Alabama would have still had something to say about that. But 7:30 kick on ABC. Miami, a 4.5-point favorite, over under 54.5. Joe, can the Seminoles pull off the outright upset and get back on the horse after last week's loss?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to pick Florida State to pull off the outright upset here, 28-24. I will take Florida State to cover the 4.5. I'm going to go with the under because I do think if Florida State wants to win this game, they're going to have to keep it a little bit low scoring. I know 28-24 in college terms is a little low scoring. NFL wise, you might think that's a little more of a high scoring game, but I just think kind of like how we were saying Virginia has the ultimate fall on your face spot. Last week was a trap game for Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
The trap got them. They lost. They have now spent this entire week and an extra day. They did have, because it was a Friday night game, being embarrassed, seeing everything on social media, turning it all around. And now you have your biggest game of the season, your biggest rivals. I know they play Florida at the end of the year every year, but to me, Florida State's biggest rival is Miami, and I'm sure they all think that too. You get Miami coming to your house, the number 3 team in the country. Everyone's saying Miami's finally back. This is the ACC's best hope at a national champion. All of this stuff, and you have the opportunity to pull off that upset. Thomas Castellanos, I mean, these were the games that you came to Florida State for. You're already talking all that about Bama. You backed it up. Now you get a chance to play Miami and Carson Beck, who are flying high in their own right after 2 pretty big wins to start off their year with Notre Dame and Florida. But the one big thing for me, those games were at home. This is their first road game on the season. Carson Beck's first road game with Miami. I know he's been in plenty of big road games at Georgia, but this team still, it's tough when you go your first 4 games of the season in your house on the road now to the most hostile environment you'll have the rest of the season. I know they go to SMU, they go to Virginia Tech, they go to Pitt. It will not compare to this massive rivalry game. And that's kind of why I'm going with Florida State here to pull off the upset and just completely make people think like what's going to happen in the ACC again. The ACC, people are going to be saying, is going to shoot themselves in the foot. As a Georgia Tech to make the playoff ticket holder, I would really hope that happens because Georgia Tech has a pretty easy path going forward. But I'm going with Florida State to pull off the upset. I think Tommy Castellanos is going to have another big game. And then Miami is going to be sitting there, the rest of the way looks pretty manageable for Miami. Like, I don't think this is an elimination game for Miami whatsoever, even if they go out and lose this game by like 70. But Florida State, you can kind of start to get into the rest of their schedule and you start to worry if you're Florida State right now sitting there at 18. I know you upset Bama, but the rest of the way, if you lose this game in conference, Clemson being terrible this year and Florida being bad really kills the rest of your schedule because those are supposed to be 2 more marquee games late in the year. But right now, if you look at their schedule, there's not a whole lot of meat left on the bone for them to impress the committee and potentially fight their way back into a playoff spot.
Yeah, when you look at Miami, they've been making me eat my words thus far. They've been damn impressive. Carson Beck has looked really good as well. But my thing with Miami, I never really questioned the talent, but just kind of the execution throughout the season because they had a really talented squad last year, obviously led by Cam Ward, and that team really fell apart down the stretch. So this 4-0 start is great, but let's see if they can sustain it throughout the year. But Ruben Bain's been a menace off the edge. That defense definitely looks a lot better, and heads off to Carson Beck. He's had a really good start to the season, but let's see if he can continue it throughout. And like you said, Joe, Florida State in this matchup is playing for their life, playing for their season. I don't care about that Alabama win. If you lose 2 games here in the ACC, you're not going to be making the college football playoffs. Plain and simple, you have to win the ACC to win that. And if you're starting out 0-2 in the conference, you have a really steep uphill climb and already have a couple tiebreakers against you. So Florida State, this is their Super Bowl. Huge, huge matchup for them. Castellanos has looked great. I think he has been a really fun player to watch, obviously, over the years in college football, an ultimate college football type of quarterback. Can he do it? Can he get it done on the big stage? He almost won them back last week. He had some stones moments last week, but this is the biggest game of his college football career, bar none. So huge matchup. I just think Miami is a better team right now, and I think that's a really tough game to get back from. You were kind of talking about it at the beginning on your little part about this game, but last week's game kind of reminded me of, or at least this week's game for Florida State kind of reminds me of what Illinois went through last week, and it wasn't as big of a blowout, but a super disappointing loss against Indiana. They had to get themselves back up off the mat, had a big opportunity at home. They were underdogs against USC, and they found a way to win that one outright in a pretty chaotic game. Can Florida State get themselves back off the map? And I know it's a real different team than last year, but that team last year, Florida State, did not handle adversity well at all. It's a lot of different guys, but you still got the same guy leading you. Is he able to get this team back up off the mat after facing some adversity with that Virginia loss last week? I don't have the most confidence in Mike Norvell in that spot. So that's why I'm going to take Miami to win this one 31-24. They'll cover that 4.5 on the road, and we'll also take the over to hit there by the hook. So I like Miami and Carson Beck to go on the road this week and win. And he's going to continue to make me eat my words for now, but you got to admit when you're wrong sometimes, and Carson Beck and Miami look legit thus far. But let's see if they can keep it up throughout the season. All right, final two picks of the week, our dog of the day and our lock of the week. Joe, you can start us off here. You hit your dog of the day with Virginia. We touched on it several times already, winning outright last week, +7 at Florida State. What do you got for us this week?
Going with the Maryland Terrapins, +6.5 at home, taking on Washington. Washington coming off a tough loss against Ohio State, where even with some of the great defensive plays they had, really couldn't get it going offensively. Showed really quick that they were just outclassed. Very impressive win for Ohio State going all the way out there, big primetime game. And once again, you want to talk about these like letdown spots. They have the emotional letdown of Ohio State beating them. And unlike Florida State, where you get to come home after like an upset or just an emotional loss in general, you have to go all the way across the country to play a Maryland team with shout out Malik Washington, freshman quarterback at Maryland, already 1,038 yards passing, 8 TDs, 1 pick. Very great freshman start for him at Maryland. For a Maryland team that's 4-0, and if they win this game, because this is not an easy game at all for them, if they win this game and you start to look at that schedule going forward, they host Nebraska the week after this, then they go to UCLA. They could potentially be sitting there at 7-0. November 1st, Indiana comes to town. That could be a massive game all of a sudden. Maryland avoids Ohio State this year. They avoid Oregon, and they avoid Penn State, which is crazy. They still have to play Illinois and Michigan as well as Indiana. But when you avoid the big three in that conference, that's pretty impressive. And if you look at that schedule and how they're starting so far, you're looking at a playoff dark horse. This is a big game for them. 3:30 kick. I expect, the Maryland faithful. I expect SVP to be there. I expect all those guys to be going crazy. And Malik Washington's a kid. He's from Maryland, so I really hope he stays there. Because I saw a tweet when they were beating Wisconsin, and the tweet, it was like, imagine him in a bigger program. It's like, why? Why can't we just let kids stay at these schools and build up, and all of a sudden, hey, Maryland is the next Indiana, or Maryland's fighting for a playoff spot every year? Why does it have to be, oh, okay, this kid's going to look cool in burnt orange next year, or oh, this kid's going to look good down in the swamp? Like, just let them stay in Maryland. Let them have fun. Let the other programs get a little bit of shine as well. What? Yeah, it sucks. If I was SVP, I'd have a $10 million contract tomorrow on SVP Sports Center, being like, this is for you. Stay home.
Yeah, I was looking at this game too. I was actually talking on the radio about this game with Brace today, +6.5. You touched on it. Washington, after playing the number one team in the country, probably feeling a little bit beat up after playing that physical Ohio State team. Now you're flying all the way across the country to a Maryland team coming off the bye. Looks like an ideal spot here, but one of those kind of head-scratching lines, like, why is this the number? But maybe we can get a steal here with this one. I'm going to go with another cross-country game for mine, an ACC battle, yes, between Cal and Duke. Cal is a 3-point favorite, Cal is a 3-point dog here at home against Duke. I think it's a tough spot, 10:30 kickoff time, so that's a 10:30 body clock PM kick for the Duke Blue Devils. I'm sure that they're going out there like Friday to probably try and get acclimated, or Thursday maybe even to get acclimated. But still, this is a really tough spot for Duke to go all the way across the country. If you remember, I think it was this exact weekend last year, Miami was in the same spot, flew all the way across the country to Cal, and Cam Ward in Miami needed some last-minute heroics to pull that game out for the outright win. So I think Cal, especially coming off that really disappointing loss, I think it was 34-0 to San Diego State. I think they really are a little bit more honed in and focused on this matchup, and probably ironed some things out that kind of held them back in that one. The freshman quarterback has looked awesome. He struggled last game, obviously, but I'm looking at this one as a potential get-back spot. Duke's defense hasn't looked that great to start the year. That Illinois offense really had their way with them. I think Cal, this is a kind of funky spot here at home. I like them +3, and I definitely think that they can win this one outright too. All right, lock of the week, Joe, coming off your first loss of the season, but still a great start at 5-1. I cashed mine last week, which was Tennessee and Mississippi State over, and I think next week we'll probably touch on Mississippi State, or they actually were in the running for one of the games this week. But awesome story that the way that they've been playing ball to start the year, starting out 4-1 and dropping a game to Tennessee, and I think it was at least overtime or double overtime last week. But they've been one of the underrated stories of the year. But my lock of the week this week, I'm going with Georgia, -20.5 at home versus Kentucky. Simple as Georgia loses at home last week to Alabama, first loss at home since 2016. I don't envision practice this week being very fun down there in Athens. I think there's a lot of emphasis on, if we're going to be the top dog in the SEC, we got to get better. Georgia hasn't looked particularly impressive thus far to start the year. Needed some pretty crazy heroics to come back in that game against Tennessee, and then they let Alabama obviously walk into their house and beat them. I think Georgia comes out in this one and beats up on the worst team in the SEC, maybe the worst team in the Power Four here in Kentucky. Maybe not that bad, but still one of the 5 worst Power Four teams in my eyes. I think Georgia puts a beat down on them by 30+. So give me Georgia -20.5 at home versus Kentucky in the spot.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with a team from the Bluegrass State. We already talked about this game, and I usually try to make my locks of the week outside of our big games, but I love Louisville this week. I'm going with Louisville -6.5. It's my lock of the week. Hoping to bounce back. I think, we have already talked about it. This is just a big fall flat spot for Virginia, and I don't want to take anything away from that start for that program. That was a great win. One of the coolest field stormings I've ever seen. I was worried for a second for the Florida State receiver because he was just immediately surrounded by thousands of students. But that's what's awesome about college football. That's what you're not going to get anywhere else. College football is the best. I am going with Louisville, however, to bounce back or to knock off Virginia here. Really fall flat spot. It's tough, like I was saying earlier with even Bama. It's tough to get back up after like a program defining win like that against a program like Florida State. It's really tough to get back up for a game like this. So I'm going with Louisville here to cover the 6.5 at home.
All right, well, you heard it here first. Joe Kmetz getting back on the horse this week. Louisville -6.5. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. A very big week coming up in college football, just like each and every week. But, week by week, it's crazy how fast it's going. Tomorrow, hard to believe we're already in October. Feels like just yesterday was Iowa State, Kansas State, but that's how fast the season goes. But as always, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Please like, please subscribe, and we'll be talking to you next week here on Beef Up Front.